My wife cheated and walked out with a smirk, but when her life fell apart, she tried to come back, and when I refused, she turned me into her final sick obsession. It was dark, and I was standing right outside a cheap motel, my heart pounding, fists clenched. There it was, plain as day, my wife's car, parked just steps away from some dingy motel room. Not a restaurant, not a friend's house, but here, a motel, the kind of place where secrets hide and lies unravel. I pulled out my phone, my hand shaking as I dialed her number. It rang barely once before she picked up, her voice so cheerful it made my blood boil. She sounded like she was exactly where she said she'd be, out shopping, just like she'd told me.
"Hey honey, just picking up a few things."
"Don't worry, I'll be home soon," she said, like it was any other night. "Just picking up a few things, huh?" I replied, fighting to keep the fury out of my voice. I stared at her car right there in front of me, her lie 100 times clearer now. "Yep, almost done," she said, her voice so casual, like there wasn't a care in the world. I clicked off the call, my jaw clenched, and shoved the phone in my pocket, feeling the weight of the old baseball bat in the back of my truck. I didn't know what I'd do, but one thing was clear. I'd caught her red-handed. My hands were shaking, but I gripped the bat tighter, feeling its solid weight in my palms. I'd never been a violent guy, but tonight felt different, like all that trust, all those years together, had just evaporated into the cold night air, leaving something raw and ugly behind. The light outside the motel room flickered, and for a second, I considered walking right up to her door. Part of me wanted to kick it open, demand an answer, let her see me standing there with the truth smeared across my face. I wanted to see her panic, watch her lie crumble in real time. But I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the door like it was some kind of portal to a world I'd never been a part of. And then, like the night had a sick sense of humor, I heard laughter, a man's laugh, followed by her voice, that soft, familiar tone I'd once loved. She was in there with him, no more than 10 feet away from where I was standing. My heart twisted, and something inside me snapped. Before I knew it, I was walking up to the door, my pulse roaring in my ears, and for a second, everything was a blur. I lifted the bat, just about ready to break down the door, when it swung open. She froze, her smile dropping the second she saw me. There she was, standing under the harsh motel lights in that familiar dress, the same one she'd worn on our last anniversary. Behind her, some guy stood, looking stunned, half-dressed, like he'd been interrupted mid-laugh. His shock quickly turned to alarm as he glanced from me to the bat, then back to Anna. "Tom, what are you doing here?" she stammered, trying to regain her composure, but I could see the fear flickering in her eyes. She clutched the doorframe, like it could somehow save her from what was coming next. "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "What am I doing here, Anna? Why didn't you tell me? Out shopping, you said. Didn't realize they sold broken promises in motels these days." She glanced back at the guy, who was already pulling on his shirt, his face paling by the second. "Tom, listen, it's not what it looks like," she began, her voice trembling. "Oh, so it's not what it looks like?" I cut her off, my voice louder than I'd intended. "Because it sure looks like you're here with him while telling me you're picking up groceries." Her face twisted into something I didn't recognize, and suddenly, she was no longer the woman I'd spent years of my life with. She was a stranger, with a cold, calculated look. "Tom," she said, regaining her composure, as if she'd practiced it, "we're both adults here. Things haven't exactly been perfect between us. Maybe if you paid more attention to me, this wouldn't have happened." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd always tried my best for her, or at least I'd thought I had, but she didn't care. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even ashamed. Instead, she stood there, practically blaming me for her betrayal. "Don't you dare put this on me," I shot back, my voice shaking with a mixture of hurt and rage. "I've been here every single day, believing in you and us, and this is how you repay me?" She just shrugged, looking bored, as if my pain was nothing more than an inconvenience. "Maybe you should have tried harder," she said, tossing a dismissive glance back at the guy, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I stared at her, feeling the sting of her words cut deeper than any lie she'd ever told me. In that moment, I realized that whatever we had was gone, shattered beyond repair. The silence hung thick in the air between us, interrupted only by the hum of a distant highway and the creak of the motel sign swinging in the wind. She looked at me, a twisted smirk creeping onto her face, as if she thought this was a game she'd won. And him, he was frozen, clutching his half-buttoned shirt, eyes darting from me to the bat still gripped tightly in my hand. I didn't know if I wanted to scream, cry, or laugh. How had my life, my marriage, all of it come down to this? Just hours before, I'd kissed her goodbye as she left the house, believing every word she'd said about just needing some time to herself. Now, here she was, throwing every broken promise back in my face like they were worthless. She took a step back, leaning casually against the doorframe, like she didn't have a care in the world. Tom, seriously, what were you expecting? She sneered, crossing her arms. You've always been so predictable. I'm surprised it took you this long to figure it out. Those words hit me like a slap. Predictable. Here I was, thinking I was giving her the stability, the trust that every relationship needed. I'd been working extra hours, trying to save up for a vacation we'd talked about, thinking it would bring back some spark between us. But it turns out she wasn't looking for stability. She was looking for excuses. Oh, I'm predictable? I shot back, feeling a laugh bubble up despite the anger twisting inside me. Is that what this is about? You got bored, so you thought you'd turn our marriage into a joke? She rolled her eyes, and I noticed that her face held none of the remorse, none of the guilt I'd hoped might show up. God, Tom, get over yourself, she replied, her tone as cold as ice. Our marriage was stale. You never listened, you never saw me. Do you even know what I like anymore? What I want, I whispered. I thought I knew you, the weight of it settling over me. But maybe I didn't. Her lover coughed awkwardly, clearly wanting to escape the scene, but I turned my gaze to him, pinning him in place. And you, I demanded, my voice low and steady, you're the guy who's been sneaking around with her, lying to me, to your own family, I'm guessing? His face paled.
Look, man, I didn't know it was like this.
She told me you two were basically done, I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. She told you that? Well, you're just as stupid as I was. Anna sighed, rolling her eyes again, as if we were inconveniencing her. This is ridiculous, she muttered, looking back at him. Come on, let's go. This isn't worth the drama. That casual dismissal, like I was some stranger in her way, an obstacle instead of the man she'd promised to love, sparked something fierce in me. Go? I echoed, stepping forward, blocking her path. You think you can just walk away from this? She looked me up and down, smirking. Why not? You can play the victim all you want, Tom, but let's be real. This marriage has been dead for years. You were just too blind to see it. Those words stung deeper than any physical wound ever could. I'd thought we'd been building something, thought that even if we had our rough patches, we'd still been committed. But here she was, tearing down every memory, every moment, as if it meant nothing. Her words made it clear she hadn't been my wife in a long time. She'd been playing a role, biding her time, waiting for something better to come along. And now, I was standing here, face to face with the woman I thought I knew, realizing that every single moment we'd shared had been a lie. I looked at her, feeling something inside me shift. You know what, Anna? You're right. This marriage is dead. You killed it, she scoffed, brushing past me without a second glance. Finally, you get it, she muttered under her breath. She grabbed her lover's arm, and together they started walking down the corridor, leaving me standing there, clutching the bat like a lifeline. As they reached the corner, I couldn't hold back anymore. Hey, I called out, my voice echoing down the empty hallway. They both stopped, turning to look back, her face twisted in irritation, his in nervousness. Enjoy your freedom, Anna, I said, my voice steady, because once I'm done with this, you won't have anything left to run back to. She raised an eyebrow, as if she didn't believe me. Whatever, Tom, you're all talk. The anger that had been boiling in me since I'd first seen her car in that parking lot finally surged forward. No, I replied, feeling a sense of finality settle over me. I'm done talking. I'll be seeing you in court. Her expression faltered for just a moment, a flicker of worry crossing her face, but she quickly shrugged it off, pulling her lover along without looking back. As I stood there, watching them disappear around the corner, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I knew what I had to do now. This wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. She'd taken enough from me, but now I was taking control. I turned, walking back to my truck, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle on my shoulders. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel defeated. I felt free. She thought she could walk away unscathed, that I'd just sit back and accept her betrayal, but she was wrong. As I drove away from that motel, I made a promise to myself. This was the end of her lies and the beginning of something new for me. The drive home was a blur of headlights, empty roads, and silence. I'd never felt silence so loud. I kept replaying her words in my head, the coldness, the sneer, the way she shrugged off years of commitment like it was just something she could discard. It was like everything I thought I knew about her had been a mirage, and I'd been wandering in the desert, trusting in something that had never really been there. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. The porch light glowed warmly, the same way it had every night for years, but now it felt like it was mocking me. All those late nights I'd come home after work, dead tired, thinking this was my safe place, but it hadn't been safe in a long time. I just hadn't known it. I stepped inside, dropping the keys on the kitchen counter. The house was quiet, and for once, that quiet felt peaceful. She wasn't here, and I didn't have to brace myself for her complaints, her sighs, the way she'd ignore me when I tried to connect. The weight of her absence was oddly liberating. I walked into the living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. There we were, Anna and me, smiling, frozen in time, our wedding day, our first house, our vacations. I looked at her face in those photos, searching for a hint of the woman I'd just confronted, but all I saw was a stranger. The realization hit me like a punch. I'd been in love with an illusion. The real Anna, the one who'd sneered at me, belittled me, cheated on me. That woman had been there all along, hidden behind smiles and empty words. I reached up, taking the first photo off the wall, our wedding picture. I stared at it, remembering the vows, the promises, the excitement we'd shared. And then, without thinking, I ripped the photo down the middle. The tearing sound was sharp, final, like ripping off a bandage that had covered an infected wound for too long. One by one, I took down the photos. Each rip felt like I was peeling away years of lies, reclaiming my life from the illusion of what we'd had. By the time I was done, the wall was bare, and the floor was littered with torn memories. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter, like I'd just shed the weight of all those lies. As I picked up the pieces, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped, and for a split second, I thought maybe it was her. Maybe she'd come back, ready to explain herself. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Anna. It was our neighbor, Claire. Claire looked at me, her brow furrowed. "Tom, is everything all right? I saw you pull in and, well, you looked pretty shaken. I tried to brush it off, but she wasn't buying it." "Claire, it's complicated," I managed, rubbing the back of my neck, feeling the exhaustion creeping in. "Look," she said, a hint of kindness in her voice. "I don't mean to pry, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm here." I hesitated. Claire had always been there in the background of our lives, helping out, sharing a cup of coffee, giving us a hand with small things around the house. I'd never thought much about her beyond being a good neighbor, but tonight, with everything raw and unfiltered, her presence felt like an anchor. We sat down in the kitchen, and before I knew it, I was telling her everything. I told her about following Anna, the motel, the confrontation. The more I talked, the more I realized just how much I'd been bottling up over the years, how many things I'd let slide, how many red flags I'd ignored just to keep the peace. Claire listened, her face a mixture of empathy and quiet anger on my behalf. "Tom," she said gently when I was done, "you didn't deserve any of that. She had no right." Hearing someone else say it felt like validation I hadn't realized I needed. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "Thanks, Claire. I think I just needed someone to listen." She reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Anytime. You're a good guy, Tom. Don't let her make you feel like this is on you." We sat in silence for a moment, her hand still resting on mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen, truly seen, like someone understood the depth of what I was going through. It wasn't romantic, at least not then, but there was something comforting in that simple gesture, like she was saying, "I'm here. You're not alone." After a few minutes, she squeezed my hand and stood up. "If you need anything, don't hesitate, really." As she left, I felt an odd sense of hope. The house was emptier than it had ever been, but it also felt like I was on the verge of something new, something honest. Anna had ripped away the illusion of our marriage, but in doing so, she'd given me a blank slate. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I spent the rest of the night clearing out the remnants of our life together. Her clothes, her books, the little knickknacks she'd brought home over the years. Every item I tossed into the box felt like a piece of closure, a step toward reclaiming myself. When I finally crawled into bed, the house felt eerily quiet, but I was at peace. I knew the road ahead would be rough, that there would be days when the weight of what she'd done would hit me all over again, but I also knew I'd get through it. Claire's kindness, her words echoed in my mind as I drifted off. "You didn't deserve any of that." As sleep took over, I felt a strange sense of freedom, like I'd finally shaken off the chains of a life I'd outgrown without even realizing it. The next morning, the sunlight streaming through the blinds felt sharper, brighter, like it was illuminating everything I'd been ignoring for too long. Waking up alone, without Anna's presence nearby, felt both surreal and strangely freeing. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the events of last night settle over me. She was gone, really gone, and this time it wasn't a temporary absence or an argument that would be patched over. This was a full-on reckoning. I knew I needed to keep the momentum going. Sitting in a house that still smelled faintly of her perfume, surrounded by reminders of a life that no longer existed, was a recipe for self-destruction. So I grabbed my phone and began making calls, to a lawyer, to the bank, to anyone I'd need to start untangling myself from her. With every call, every decision, I felt a bit more like myself, a bit more in control. I was done being a passive observer in my own life. Just as I was finishing up a call with the lawyer, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Anna. "We need to talk. I'll come by at noon." I stared at the message, a cocktail of anger and curiosity swirling in my chest. What could she possibly have to say that she hadn't already sneered at me last night? But part of me wanted to hear it, if only to close this chapter with as much finality as I could. I replied with a simple fine and waited. Noon came faster than I expected, and I felt a pang of anxiety when I heard the doorbell. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, then opened the door to face her. She stood there, looking as put together as ever, dressed in a crisp white blouse and tailored pants. It was like she dressed for a job interview, or maybe for an apology she thought I'd accept without question. "Tom," she started, her tone softer than last night, almost apologetic. She stepped inside, glancing around the house like she'd forgotten what it looked like. I stood in the hallway, arms crossed, making no move to welcome her. "What do you want, Anna?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. She sighed, as though this whole thing was inconvenient for her, a minor setback she had to deal with before moving on. "Look, last night got out of hand. I wasn't in the right frame of mind. I didn't mean to hurt you like that." I stared at her, incredulous. "Out of hand?" I echoed. "Anna, you've been lying to me, sneaking around, breaking every promise we ever made to each other, and now you want to tell me it just got out of hand?" Her face twisted, but not in regret. She looked annoyed, as if she couldn't believe I was making this difficult for her. "Fine, yes, I cheated. I didn't want things to end like this, but can you honestly tell me you're surprised?" I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I took a deep breath, refusing to let her control the narrative. "Surprised? No, Anna, I'm not surprised. I'm disgusted. You didn't even try to fix things, to talk to me, to work on our marriage. You just left it." She shrugged, a hint of defiance in her eyes. Maybe I didn't think there was anything left to fix. That stung, but I'd prepared myself for this. "Then why are you here, Anna? If you're so convinced this marriage was nothing, why bother coming back now?" She hesitated, a flicker of something passing over her face, guilt maybe, or a shadow of the woman I'd once loved. "I just thought, we have history, Tom. I don't want things to end with us hating each other. I thought we could at least be civil." I almost laughed at that, but the bitterness held me back. "Civil?" I repeated. "After what you did, you want us to be civil?" She shifted her weight, looking uncomfortable for the first time. "Look, maybe I made mistakes. Maybe I should have ended things sooner, but I don't regret moving on, Tom. Maybe it's time you did too." And there it was, the final nail in the coffin of any illusion that she might be sorry, that she might want to make amends. This was her way of closing the door on our life together, without taking any real responsibility, without feeling anything. I took a deep breath, feeling the last of my hurt harden into resolve. "You know what, Anna?" I said, my voice steady and calm. "You're right. It's time I moved on. But don't think for a second that I'll make this easy for you. You don't get to come here, spout some hollow apology, and leave without consequences." She raised an eyebrow, folding her arms defensively. "What's that supposed to mean?" I replied. "It means you're not walking away from this unscathed. I've already spoken to a lawyer, and I'm not about to let you walk out of here with the house or the accounts or anything else you think you're entitled to." Her face paled for a moment, and she blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected me to fight back. "Tom, let's be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I shook my head. "No, Anna, you had your chance for reasonable. You threw that away when you decided this marriage meant nothing to you. Now it's just business, and trust me, I'll make sure you get exactly what you deserve." Her expression shifted, a flash of anger crossing her face. "Fine, Tom, you want to play it that way? Go ahead. But don't think you're going to come out of this looking like some saint. People make mistakes, Tom. Don't act like you're perfect." I let her words wash over me, unmoved. "Mistakes?" I said, shaking my head. "This wasn't a mistake, Anna. This was a choice, your choice. Now you have to live with it." She stared at me, finally seeing that I wasn't going to bend, that there was no sympathy left in me for her. Without another word, she turned and walked out the door, leaving it swinging open behind her. I watched her go, feeling an odd sense of satisfaction in her retreat. When she was gone, I closed the door, the finality of it echoing through the house. For the first time, I felt free, truly free. There would be more battles to fight, more steps to take to rebuild my life, but I knew I could do it. Anna had torn down the life I thought I wanted, but she'd also cleared the way for me to create something real, something that was mine. As I stood there, I realized that her betrayal had given me something she never intended, a second chance. And this time, I was going to make sure I built a life on my own terms. After Anna left, the silence in the house was different, almost deafening. It wasn't peaceful like I'd felt the night before. It was hollow, a vast emptiness that wrapped itself around me. I walked through each room, noticing every item she'd left behind, as if it were mocking me, reminding me that even in her absence she lingered. Her clothes were still in the closet, her books lined the shelves, and our wedding album lay neatly on the coffee table, as though none of it had ever mattered to her. But this wasn't her space anymore, it was mine. I took a breath, trying to shake off the sadness creeping back in, and forced myself to do something I'd been putting off for a long time. I grabbed a couple of cardboard boxes from the garage and started packing up her things. One by one, I tossed her sweaters, her favorite mugs, the knickknacks she'd collected from places she traveled without me. Each item I touched felt like I was exorcising her ghost, reclaiming my own life from the mess she'd left behind. Halfway through, a familiar sound caught me off guard. My phone vibrated on the counter, and I glanced down to see a text from Claire. "Hey Tom, just checking in, are you okay?" She was probably the only person I'd told about what had happened, and somehow that small gesture of concern warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in days. I typed back quickly, getting there. "Thanks for checking in. Just packing up her things." The reply came faster than I expected. "Do you need help? I could come over if you want. We could box it up together. Might make it easier." I hesitated, staring at the screen. Normally I would have said no. I'd always been the type to handle things alone, to power through without asking for help. But something about Claire's message made me pause. Maybe it was the fact that she'd listened to me when I needed it most, or maybe it was because the idea of doing this alone suddenly felt a bit too heavy. That would be nice, actually. "Thanks, Claire," I replied. Within 20 minutes, she was at my door. Claire's presence brought a surprising sense of calm with her. She didn't ask any probing questions or try to dissect what had happened. Instead, she just gave me a nod and rolled up her sleeves. We tackled the boxes together, working side by side in silence, her quiet support making the task feel a little less painful. As we packed, a sense of levity started creeping in. We found humor in some of the things we unearthed. Gifts Anna had insisted on buying but never used, decorations she'd brought home only to forget about a month later. Claire's laughter was infectious, and I found myself chuckling too, the ache in my chest loosening bit by bit. We moved on to the photo albums next. She handed one to me, and I flipped through it, the images flashing by like scenes from a different life. There we were in our early days, smiling, young, optimistic. There were the family gatherings, the vacations, the endless memories that seemed like they belonged to someone else now. Each smile looked like a lie. "I can't believe I held on to all this," I murmured, closing the album and tossing it into the box. She left long before I realized it. Claire nodded, her eyes soft. Sometimes it's hard to see the cracks until they're too big to ignore. I looked at her, realizing just how much I appreciated her understanding. She wasn't trying to fix me or give advice, she was just there, giving me the space to feel what I needed to feel. When we finally finished, I offered to make us some coffee. We sat in the kitchen, sipping quietly, the silence comfortable. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt this at ease in my own home. "Thank you, Claire," I said, breaking the quiet. "I don't know how I'd be doing any of this without you." She smiled, reaching across the table to give my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're stronger than you think, Tom. You just need a little push." Her touch lingered a bit longer than I expected, and for the first time, I realized there was something deeper in her eyes, a warmth I hadn't noticed before. I brushed it off, chalking it up to gratitude and the closeness of the moment, but somewhere deep down, something had shifted. As Claire stood up to leave, I walked her to the door. She turned to face me, her expression hesitant. "Listen, Tom, I just wanted to say, I'm here for you, whatever you need, whenever you need it." Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with something unspoken. I wanted to say something, to thank her again, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I just nodded, watching her turn and head back to her own house. Once the door closed, I was left standing alone again, but the emptiness felt different this time. Claire's presence had filled some of the void Anna had left, and I couldn't shake the thought that maybe I'd been given a second chance at something real. Over the next few days, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I met with the lawyer, got my finances in order, and even started taking on a few projects around the house that I'd been putting off for years. The distractions helped, but it was the quiet moments that stayed with me. The memory of Claire's laughter, her steady presence, her words of encouragement. One evening, as I was finishing up repainting the bedroom walls, I got another message from her. "Need a break? Come over for a drink." I didn't hesitate. I replied with a quick "be right over," and within minutes, I was standing on her porch, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement I hadn't felt in years. Claire greeted me with a smile, handing me a beer as we settled onto her back patio, watching the sun dip below the horizon. We talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as naturally as if we'd done this 100 times before. I realized then that I hadn't felt this alive, this seen, in a long time. At some point, the conversation drifted into silence, and we both looked up at the stars, their light flickering against the dark sky. I felt her hand brush against mine, a gentle, tentative touch that made my heart race. Without thinking, I turned to her, searching her eyes for any sign of hesitation, but there was none. She looked back at me, her gaze steady and open, and in that moment I knew that whatever had brought us to this point was real. I didn't know where it would go or what it meant, but I knew one thing: I wasn't alone in this anymore. As our hands intertwined, I felt the past finally slip away, replaced by something new and unexpected. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. I'd never imagined that my life would turn out this way, that I'd find myself not only rebuilding after betrayal, but discovering something real, something hopeful. Claire and I kept things quiet at first, cautiously exploring what felt like a delicate balance between friendship and something deeper. But the more time I spent with her, the more I felt my walls crumble. I found myself looking forward to our late-night conversations, her laughter, the ease with which we understood each other. One evening, as I was putting the finishing touches on a bookshelf I'd built for the living room, a project I'd picked up as a distraction after Anna left, I heard a knock at the door. Claire usually texted before coming over, so I was surprised, but when I opened the door, it wasn't her standing there. It was Anna. She looked different, worn, almost nervous. Gone was the confidence she'd exuded when she'd walked out of my life that night at the motel. Now she stood there with a hesitant smile, clutching her purse like it was her only anchor. "Tom," she began, her voice softer than I remembered. "Can I come in?" I didn't move for a moment, stunned by the sight of her. My mind raced with memories, both good and bad, and I felt a strange mix of pity and anger. But after a moment, I stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. She walked in slowly, looking around the room as if she didn't recognize it anymore. In truth, it was different. I was different. I heard you've been busy," she said, her voice wavering slightly, "making changes. The house looks good." I nodded, keeping my distance, watching her closely. "Yeah, I've been making a few updates. Thought it was time to start fresh." She nodded, biting her lip. "I can see that." She paused, shifting uncomfortably. "Tom, I came to apologize." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. After everything she'd done, the betrayal, the lies, the callous way she'd walked away, she thought she could just show up and say sorry. "Apologize?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Anna, what exactly are you apologizing for?" She flinched, glancing away. For everything," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "For the way I treated you, for the affair, for not appreciating you when I should have." I studied her, searching for sincerity, but there was something in her tone that felt hollow. I'd known Anna long enough to recognize when she was trying to manipulate a situation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this apology had an ulterior motive. "Why now, Anna?" I asked, folding my arms. "Why come back now, after all this time?" She hesitated, and that's when I saw it. The flicker of panic in her eyes, the same expression I'd seen that night when I'd told her I'd be seeing her in court. She'd underestimated me, thought I'd go down quietly, that I wouldn't fight back. But now it seemed she realized she'd lost control of the narrative. I guess I thought I could handle things on my own," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But things haven't exactly gone the way I planned. I'm staying with a friend for now, but it's temporary." The pieces fell into place. She'd lost her safety net. The guy she'd left me for had probably kicked her to the curb, and now she was scrambling to find her footing, and I was her next best option. "Let me get this straight," I said, barely containing my frustration. "You're here because you want a place to stay?" She shook her head, looking indignant. "No, Tom, it's not like that. I miss what we had. I was wrong to throw it all away. I realize that now." I felt a wave of anger surge through me. All those years I'd spent trying to be the best husband I could, only for her to discard me like a spare part, and now, when things weren't going her way, she had the nerve to come back, pretending to regret it all. "You miss what we had?" I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. "Anna, what we had was dead long before you walked out that door. You didn't care about us, you cared about having options." Her face twisted, a flash of anger sparking in her eyes. "Maybe I made mistakes, but don't pretend you were perfect, Tom. You were always so predictable, so boring." I laughed bitterly. "Boring? You mean I was dependable, I was loyal, I was someone you could count on? Because if that's boring, then yeah, I'll own it. But I'll take that over being reckless, selfish, and unfaithful any day." She looked away, her jaw clenched, as if trying to figure out her next move. For a moment I thought she'd apologize, really apologize, but instead she sighed, shaking her head. "Well," she said, her voice cold, "it's obvious you've moved on, so I won't waste any more of your time." As she turned to leave, a strange sense of relief washed over me. This was closure, in the most unexpected way. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need anything from her. I'd already moved on, in ways she'd never understand. Just as she reached the door, Claire appeared on the porch, carrying a small basket of fresh muffins. She froze when she saw Anna, her eyes darting between us. For a split second there was an awkward silence, and then Claire stepped forward, her usual warmth radiating as she looked at me. "Hey Tom, I thought I'd bring these over," she said, smiling. "Hope I'm not interrupting." Anna's eyes narrowed, and I could almost feel her seething as she looked at Claire, the pieces connecting in her mind. "I see," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Didn't take you long, did it?" I felt Claire's hand gently touch my arm, grounding me, reminding me that this wasn't about Anna anymore. She had no hold over me, no power here. I looked at her, calm and unbothered. "Anna, you walked out on me. You don't get to judge who I spend my time with now." Anna scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Well, good luck to you both. You'll need it." With that, she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. As the sound echoed through the house, Claire let out a soft chuckle, breaking the tension. "Guess she didn't take it well," she murmured, a playful smile on her lips. I laughed, feeling the last traces of bitterness dissolve. No, but I think I needed that closure. We stood there in the quiet house, the weight of everything finally lifting. Claire looked at me, her eyes warm and steady. "How about we celebrate? We can finally have a fresh start." I nodded, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of peace, a genuine sense of hope. Together we stepped into the kitchen, ready to leave the past behind and start something new. A month passed and life had settled into a new steady rhythm. Claire and I grew closer every day, our connection deepening into something I hadn't expected but had come to cherish. With Anna completely out of the picture, I felt lighter, freer, more like myself than I had in years. The house was finally mine, ours, maybe. We spent late nights talking about dreams, plans, our futures. It felt right. One evening, as I was putting away dinner dishes, Claire looked at me with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Hey, I've got something to show you," she said, grabbing my hand and pulling me out the door. She led me down the block to her house, where she had a small surprise waiting, a pair of plane tickets sitting on the kitchen counter. "Paris," she grinned. "I figured you could use a change of scenery." My heart skipped. I hadn't been on a vacation in years, let alone with someone I actually wanted to spend time with. I pulled her close, feeling a genuine warmth, an excitement I'd forgotten was possible. "Claire, this is amazing. You really thought of everything. Just think of it as a celebration," she whispered, wrapping her arms around my neck, "of new beginnings." I leaned in to kiss her, savoring the feeling of finally, truly moving on. But just as our lips met, the unmistakable sound of the doorbell rang through the quiet of her house, interrupting the moment. Claire frowned, glancing at me with a look of confusion. "Were you expecting someone?" I shook my head, and together we walked to the door. But as soon as I opened it, my heart dropped. There, standing on Claire's doorstep, was Anna. She looked different this time, a frantic energy buzzing around her, her hair unkempt, eyes wide and wild. I'd never seen her like this, desperate, almost feverish. "Tom," she breathed, barely glancing at Claire. "I need to talk to you. It's important." I took a step back, putting a hand on Claire's shoulder. "Anna, this is not the time. You've had your chances. It's over." She shook her head, reaching out as if to touch me, but I pulled back. "Tom, please, you don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I made a mistake, about everything, about us. I should have never left, never given up on us. I thought I needed something new, but I was wrong. I lost everything, and now I realize you're all I've ever wanted." I stared at her, feeling a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching a scene unfold that had nothing to do with me. Her words, her pleas, they felt like they were coming from someone I barely recognized, a ghost clinging to a life that had already moved on without her. "Anna," I said quietly, "I've moved on. You need to do the same." She looked at Claire, eyes narrowing and her expression twisted into one of bitterness. "With her?" She spat, her voice laced with venom. "You're choosing her over me?" I felt Claire's hand tighten in mine, grounding me. "I'm choosing myself, Anna, for the first time in a long time. It's time for you to let go." But instead of accepting it, Anna's face contorted with rage. "You think you can just throw me away after everything we've been through? I left you, Tom. That was my choice, and I've decided I want you back." Before I could reply, she lunged forward, grabbing my arm, her grip hard and desperate. Claire gasped, and in that instant, something in me snapped. I pulled my arm free, stepping between Anna and Claire. "Enough, Anna," I said, my voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "This is done. Don't come here again." She stood there, frozen, her face twisted with betrayal. Then, in a breathless whisper, she said, "You'll regret this, Tom. Both of you will." With one last burning glare, she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving a trail of icy silence in her wake. I turned to Claire, feeling a wave of exhaustion mixed with relief. "I'm sorry," I said, pulling her close. "I never wanted you to see that." She smiled, shaking her head. "It's okay. She's in the past. We're here now. Let's just focus on that." But the peace didn't last. The next morning, I woke to a strange feeling, a weight in my chest I couldn't shake. When I reached for my phone, there were dozens of missed calls from unknown numbers and a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Frowning, I pressed play. "Mr. Sanders," a woman's voice crackled over the line, official and unyielding. "This is Officer Blake from the City Police Department. We need you to come in for questioning regarding an incident involving Anna Collins. Please call us back as soon as possible." My heart stopped, my breath caught in my throat. Questioning? An incident? What had she done? The words repeated in my head as I stood frozen, the weight of the message sinking in. Claire stirred beside me, sensing my tension. "Tom, what's wrong?" I glanced at her, struggling to find the words. It's Anna. Something's happened." In a daze, I got dressed, called the number back, and found myself sitting in a cold, sterile police station within the hour, answering questions I couldn't quite make sense of. Apparently, Anna had been found at her friend's place, distraught and spiraling out of control. She'd made some serious allegations against me, painting me as a manipulative, violent ex hell-bent on ruining her life. My stomach turned as I listened. The officers looked at me with hard, skeptical eyes, their faces unreadable as they took notes, nodding occasionally. I tried to explain, to tell them the truth, but the more I spoke, the more it felt like I was falling deeper into a trap I hadn't even known existed. Hours later, I was finally released, but the weight of what had happened hung over me like a dark cloud. I walked out of that police station a free man, but the knowledge that Anna's lies could come crashing back down on me at any moment stayed with me, haunting me. When I got back to Claire's, she rushed to me, her eyes filled with concern. "Tom, what happened?" I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, feeling the exhaustion seep into my bones. "It's over, Claire," I whispered, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "She tried to tear us apart, but she can't. Not anymore." We held each other in silence, the threat of Anna's final act lingering in the air like smoke. It was the end of something dark, but also, I realized, the beginning of something unbreakable.